Getting close to getting started. Good evening, Matt. Can you do you have the ability to share your screen so when we get started, we got those pieces working correctly?
I should. Let me pull it up and see, make sure it's going to run.
Yeah, it popped up there, so it should be uh, good to go.
Just how long it takes to transition. I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch. Tell me when you see it.
Switched.
Okay. Okay. There's just a little bit of a delay, but I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. All right. We
And I
should be.
should be
I'm
okay.
not. I'm not in Moorfield this evening, so the group over there should be uh, logging on here very soon.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I'm going to stop then so you can get started
Okay.
then.
All righty. Thank you.
And Ronnie, I may leave my video off while I'm talking just to, just in case we get to a slow point in the internet, then that'll help the other
Okay.
stuff come better. And then I'll come back on as soon as I get done and we can have some questions and answers if that's okay.
Okay. Sounds great. Those of you that have joined online, appreciate you joining us this evening. A little technical difficulty. They're getting set up in the room there at Moorfield High School, so we should be ready to go here just shortly. Thanks.
Ronnie, can you hear us okay over here?
I can hear you. Yes.
All right, so we're ready to kick this off as soon as Matt gets on. Let me share my.
Matt's here, and we're ready we're ready whenever you get through with introductions.
Quick introductions and all right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. I am very excited to see the turnout that we got. This meeting is unfortunate to have, but I'm glad we can have it together and share information through agencies and different educational outlets. This wouldn't have been possible without all these people joining in, getting together to get all the information out to you guys. I've already went over the logistics of the room. We're going to go through the agenda. It is packed with lots of information. We're going to try to glaze over, that's probably not the best word, but surface hit all the topics. And then over the next couple weeks on Monday, we're going to hit a webinar for each one of the topics that we talked about today to kind of do a deeper dive into each of them. So be looking for that. It'll be on Zoom, the Zoom webinar, and it'll be recorded so that you can access it at later date if you can't get on that evening. So Jerry, I'm going to turn over to you.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I echo what Alex said. From a logistics and housekeeping standpoint, Deputy Commissioner Hatton's here. West Virginia Department of Agriculture sponsored the food tray, so let's give those guys a big round of applause for feeding you a little something. And the WU Division for Land Grant Engagement, that's the new extension college product. They're responsible for the drinks. There are a lot of people in the room. We're not going to do introductions. Everybody knows everybody. If you don't, you will before the end of the night. And we'll dive right in and get started so we can get you out of here.
All right, so Matt, if you want to start sharing your screen.
I will do that. Hold on just a second.
Okay. Joining
let's
us.
see. You have to stop sharing before I can.
How about that?
So as that's getting queued up, just like to echo what Jerry said there of all the support that we had to put this together. We're going to kick it off with Dr. Matt Poore. Matt is a ruminant nutrition extension specialist at North Carolina State. He has worked his career in grazing systems and alternative feeds and those type things. And he is quite an accomplished researcher and author. And a lot of that work has been applied. That has benefited farmers up and down the East Coast. And Matt and his family run a grass-based operation in Halifax County, Virginia. And we're just real happy that you're with us tonight, Matt. The floor is yours.
Okay, very good. Very good, Ronnie. I appreciate that introduction. And I hate that I'm talking to y'all about this particular topic tonight, but I've been in this job 34 years. And this is about the 10th time we've been through this. So it's something that's just going to come up to all of us at some time or another. So it's bad to be the ones that are in the middle of it. And but if you'll keep it in mind all the time, then it's not quite so scary to think about what if it doesn't rain and stuff like that, if you have some experience and know what to do. So I'm going to turn my video off just because you guys don't really need to see me. And it'll help with maybe with my, it'll help with my presentation if we can. And so I'll go ahead and we'll try to get through this pretty quick and take questions. And I am, again, it's kind of hard. It's a lot of topics here to cover, but I'm going to give you some feelings right off the bat. Okay, we got one hand raised. Is that something we need to respond to, Kimberly?
The chat is disabled. I didn't know if we could put questions in the chat.
Okay, that would be for Ronnie to answer. Okay, well, I'm gonna move on, and if you try the chat as we go, maybe it'll come on. If not, just save your questions till the end, and we'll catch them as we go. That's probably best to wait for the end anyway. So anyway, here we are, talking about drought management strategies, and of course, the first thing I'll tell you is, while it's best not to completely obsess with the weather forecast, it is important to know where you stand and what the future outlook is as you start trying to think about your future planning. So don't forget that it is important to think about the perspective of the long-term situation. So if you've not looked at the drought monitor, if you don't know about that, it is a very good and important resource for us. Let's see, I'm going to have to unshare for a minute and then see if I can get it to advance. Doesn't want to go for me. Okay, hopefully that'll liven it up here, and well, still doesn't want to do it. Okay. Ronnie, I'm going to try that again, but I don't know why it did advance earlier. So let me try one more time here. Nope. Ronnie, I'm going to log out and log back on. I'm really not sure why it's hung up, but
Okay.
um, do you have my presentation?
I do not, unless you sent it late
Okay.
this afternoon.
I did send it. Why don't you look for
Okay,
it
I will.
while I try to
I
get back
can
on
do
it.
that.
Ronnie, can you hear me?
I can see your opening slide and I can hear you.
Okay. We'll go ahead. It is advancing now, so let's see what happens. So again, sorry for the delay, but again, here's the map from the last 2 months of drought monitor, and there at the top, you obviously can see where you were at in West Virginia a little over a month ago, and then obviously you all are well aware that that's gotten much worse over the last month. Now, I want you to understand my perspective. I'm down here in Southern Virginia, Northern North Carolina, right on the border. We were in a D1 drought in June 25th, just like you guys were. And the difference is we've had a lot of rain. So you can see at this point, where I live, we're completely out of drought, and really most of the region now down here is had a lot of rain over the month of July. So things can happen very quickly to turn it around. And so keeping this in your mind, where are we at, will help you to make your plans as you move into the rest of the year, and then through what is likely to be a pretty tough winter. So I want to break this down into 3 stages. Drought management really can be best thought of in kind of 3 ways. And so before there's any sign of drought, we can be working on being more resilient to drought. And so this is something we've really learned at home, that if we get caught with our pastures in tough shape for some other reason, maybe we got lax on our management or something, and then we get hit by a drought, then that's when we're in trouble. So we need to be thinking about doing our best to upgrade our pasture management. Think about how do we build those very deep-rooted perennial systems, because those are the most resilient to drought and really the only kind that we can get through a drought with. We do not want to be overstocked. This has been the hardest lesson for me as a livestock person, and raised, I had 100 cows. Sometimes when the cows get a lot bigger than they used to be, then you have to change that stocking rate. And this is something a lot of our farmers have been caught with: very high fertilizer prices, very high cattle prices that encourage them not to sell cows that they might have sold otherwise. And then when a drought, you have no problem if you've got a few more cows that you should have had to begin with. So think a lot about that. Keeping an emergency hay supply on hand. You can't get ridiculous about this, but we advise people to keep at least 30 days more hay than you expect to use in the coming year. And so that you have that 30 days of sort of a pressure release in your system, where if you have to feed hay, you've got hay that's been put aside for that purpose. If you are a buyer of hay, make sure that your suppliers understand how much hay you need, and that you need hay and that you have somebody maybe that you buy hay from every year. That's really important if you do buy most of your hay, because usually those regular suppliers will try to take care of you before they sell out everything they've got to somebody that comes along, and sometimes that can be a concern. And then the final thing to think about is always keep up with your own rainfall total on your farm. And if you'll just jot that down every time you get rain, there's a lot of new apps and record programs that you can keep that information on. But that will help you to really understand how bad of a drought am I in on my farm, because some of us get lucky and get some storms others don't get. And then also sometimes you have a real wet month, and then you have an incredibly dry month, and it seems like it's terribly dry. But if you look at the rainfall up to that point, then maybe it's not as bad as you're thinking it is from looking just at the surface. So keep track of all of that, and that will help you to make good decisions as you go down the road. Now, during the drought, which this is where you all are now and where I was a month ago, don't forget to keep watching that weather and make plans around that. But have a sacrifice pasture ready to go. And when you run out of grass, put the cows there and start feeding hay. Now, I'm saying cows, doesn't matter if you have horses, sheep, goats. The only way to really save those pastures is to pull the animals off. And traditional in our area was, when you get into a bad drought, you just open up all the gates and let them find a way to live, and hopefully they all live until it's time to start feeding hay. that approach will lead to some very thin cows, very poor production, and is definitely not something you want to do. So have that sacrifice pasture ready. And when you get to that point, you should already have thought about which cows am I going to sell first, because it does come down to very early and systematic culling works really well to help you here. You want to keep your very best cows, and you don't want to get so bad that you have to, on a short notice, make a emotional decision about who you're going to sell. So I'll make some comments about that, but definitely you want to be ready to sell cows. In this market, with cattle as high as they are, understand that you're within a couple of 100 miles of places where there is no drought right now, and these decent cows are very valuable in the market. Do a feed budget so you know just how much feed you expect to need over the coming season. Think about what alternatives you might have to feed. And then finally, take care of your mental health. This is one of the most difficult things about drought, is that it just is what we call a slow disaster. It crawls a little bit more on you every single day. It takes a toll on you. You go to bed depressed. You wake up and realize it's just as dry as it was yesterday. And it's very easy to get yourself into a down state during a drought. So again, this importance of having the experience and having some kind of a plan of what do you do, how do you systematically address it as it develops, will help you to keep your mental health. And I can't stress that enough. I don't want to take that lightly, because it is a very, very difficult situation mentally for all of us that love our farm, love our animals, and then find ourselves in some difficult situation. So then follow the drought. When this one's over, and it will be, hopefully, with any luck, y'all will have some fall rains and you'll get some grass grown before the year's over. But we don't know that for sure. So once you get out of it, and hopefully it will be by next spring, you'll get a chance to start over. And no matter how good it looks, don't be tempted to buy back those cows or add back those cows that you culled during the drought, because the pastures will have a lower carrying capacity next year, even if you get a really good rainfall. And so you need to allow those pastures to completely recover before you fully stock them. And I just can't emphasize that enough. You don't want that recovering pasture to be overgrazed. Take on opportunity. If you did sell some cows and you've got some pastures that really need to be renovated, and it's land you can get on and do something with. And I understand you all have a mix of both kinds of land up there, so that's not always possible. But if you have that kind of land that you can fix and renovate into a new stand, oftentimes that gives you a lot of productivity for coming years that you didn't even have before the drought hit and maybe finished it off. And then consider how whatever you did in your management made it easier or more difficult to deal with the drought than it was for the other people that you know and that you work with and your neighbors. Oftentimes, this is where you realize, man, that, if I just had a way of controlling these cows, if I had a planned sacrifice where I could have put them in time to keep them from overgrazing, this is a really good time to think about that. And then go into that, how do I manage for the next drought long before it occurs? And I will tell you that the thing that we like the most, and the thing that is the most helpful to people, is to adopt some level of what we call adaptive rotational grazing management. This picture up here on the top shows, the use of temporary fencing. This is actually our main herd, and we use a lot of temporary fencing, move these animals pretty much every day, most of the time. And we do have a very good look at our farm and the forage resources that are ahead of us. So given that we usually manage like this, we can see about 60 days of grass ahead of us most of the time before we would actually run out. And so that really helps us to be more calm during the drought, when like we were back in early June, it looked like we were really in trouble, but we could see grass ahead of us to get to August, so we never really worried that much. And then the rains came. So again, that kind of a system can help you. It's not the easiest thing to adopt. You have to really change a lot of your philosophy about your farm. But again, a drought like this might make you reconsider your traditional management and think about how you might use some of this newer technology to improve your system. And there's a lot of pictures like the one shown here. And I just love this. This is the young family that I'm working with now on our farm, and I'm trying to teach them these lessons. And these are from a couple of root boxes that we ran last year, where the one in Brandon's right hand there that's got the short roots was overgrazed frequently throughout the summer. The one in his other hand was let to grow and only grazed 3 times during the summer. And the root system on those plants is phenomenally different. So again, remember that really those deep roots, that healthy perennial system is the best thing you have to try to help you get through these droughts that we experience pretty frequently in this area. Okay, I want to jump in now to this culling in a little bit more detail, because we do need to remember now that high prices of cows are high, and you're going to have to pay some money to get feed to keep the good cows that you're going to keep. And so we need to go ahead and get those culled before they get thin and lose a lot of value. So if you haven't already done it, hopefully many of you have done this, but if you haven't, we need to know which cows are going to have a baby next year, depending on whether you're in a spring or fall calving season. You should know that by now. You need to mouth these cows and look at their teeth. If that's something that you don't regularly do, that's something, again, you should do as a regular practice anyway. But as you go through the cows, if you haven't done through this, go through and give them a pretty good inspection, and then make some notes and put them on a list with a priority for culling. So first, you want to make sure you cull those open or cows that are defective. You know, one that's been lame for 3 years and you just hope she's going to live another year. It's time to let her go. Some of those older cows that we know have short teeth that are maybe been good cows, but we know it's their last year or two, those would be on the list. Then maybe some middle-aged cows that are not your best cows, and those would be the ones that that you would sell the last. And then, of course, I'm not mentioning there should be a group of cows, maybe at least half your cows that are cows that you just really have to keep your system going in the future. And using that kind of a system, you know, maybe numbering those or however you decide to do it, will help you make those decisions later when you have to try to make that at shoot side. A lot of times that good old cow that lost a calf gets kept just because we let our emotions run the cull, the sorting gate there, and we really should know before she comes up and we take a look in her eyes that she's one that's on the truck. And that will help you to be less emotional about that if you have done that evaluation. So again, if you don't mouth cows, you know, if you've got some real mean cows there, it's not easiest to do. Can you hold? But many folk can just grab a quick mouth and look at them pretty carefully. And certainly going through and doing a preg check either with blood or with palpation and looking at those teeth will give you a good place to start. And when you have cows with the little that are gummers like this one on the bottom right of the screen, that one actually came from an interesting case we worked with, but certainly that cow is not going to do very good for you in the future and would be better off going to harvest at this point. You all have very strong extension service there in West Virginia, as we do here in North Carolina. And so I kind of implore you to get with your extension agent, ask them for help with this drought management as you move ahead. Right now, you need to be making that winter feed budget, go through and you should be deep into a culling cycle now with the drought as extended as it is where you are. And you should be thinking about, okay, how many cows am I going to try to feed through the winter? And be aware, a mature cow, sort of an even a fairly small cow, and by today's standards needs about 40 pounds of hay a day. A bull about 60. And those are very round numbers, but that can give you a good way of counting how many days you have how many pounds of feed actually that you need to get these cows through to when grass starts in the spring. You need to inventory all the hay and forage resources you have on hand. This can, if you don't have grass, then you can't count on any grass probably for this year. You always have a chance to amend it later if we get a lot of rainfall, but certainly you need to know how much hay you have on hand. And then do the budget and see when you're going to run out. And that will allow you to determine how many days you have to purchase feed to get the group that you're going to keep through the winter. So I just can't tell you how critical it is to do this early in the process, because buying your hay before winter gets here will allow you to not have to experience the severe hay shortage that will occur in February and March. It does every time we're in a drought. And the last time I was in a really big one and we did a lot of planning, people that bought hay early were able to find it either within the state or within maybe 100 miles or so. Those that waited later brought hay from Canada, and that was very, very, very expensive, as you can imagine. So think about that. Look at the drought monitor map around you and realize that you are within maybe 150 miles only of places that are not in drought: Pennsylvania, New York, Western Ohio, Western Kentucky. And there should be a way to bring hay at a reasonably good price into the state, at least here in the fall, before all the hay gets sold. Now, you also want to consider alternatives to hay. Once you start pricing hay, typically it's going to look like it's way, way expensive. And so thinking about the fact that that hay is around 55% TDN and 10% protein, that's kind of what you're trying to replace. And you can do that. You can do that with byproduct feeds, things like soy hulls and corn gluten that have become very common feeds. Cows do quite well on those. They're about they're not quite twice as much energy as that hay, but about 1.75 times. And so you can feed a reduced amount of concentrate to a cow, especially if she's a dry cow that's going to be a spring calver. That might really be, that might be an opportunity for you, especially if you have a way of getting inexpensive commodities. Of course, the feeding management is very different, and you need to, if you've never experienced this, cows that are fed that way are very, they act like they think they're hungry. So you just need to be aware that they do look to get out of fences and all that sort of stuff if you're trying to feed them just on concentrates and a little bit of hay. And I'll comment on that a little bit more detail, because we do have quite a few people that take that approach. So the thing to keep in mind as you do this process, though, is that hay feeding is the standard to compare against. It's much easier. You're generally set up to feed hay, and trying to do anything else that requires feed bunks. And if you have a large herd, cows can actually be quite dangerous because they get aggressive around concentrates. And especially if you're trying to put out a lot for them, it can be a little bit dangerous. So you want to make sure that you have a good plan before you jump into that. There's also an option to move cows to places that do have pasture. This works good sometimes in our area where we have areas down east that they graze animals on during the winter. And so it's actually something that y'all can think about for growing like your replacement heifers and stuff. There are some grazing opportunities now down along the coast for winter grazing contracts, and that might be something to at least for some of the agents to look into and see how that might be arranged for some of the folks that really want to save those really good heifers and just don't want to keep them at home. So some of those common feeds, most of you are familiar with these, but but soy hulls, wheat midds, corn gluten feed are all kind of standards that are used there. Soy hulls and gluten feed work very well when combined or alone. Wheat middlings don't work very well that way, so kind of be careful about them. They do have a lot of starch in them and can founder cattle, but they can make a part of a concentrate. Whole cottonseed has been a good deal every year for the last few, and this year it's going to be again a pretty good cotton crop. The drought did damage the corn crop in North Carolina, but not the cotton crop very much. Virginia's in the same boat, so you may be able to get cottonseed at a decent price and a much actually a better value than any of those other concentrates. But again, you can only limit the amount to about 5 pounds per cow. Corn grain is one I put in here because if you sit down and really pencil out commodity feeds and stuff, corn is often a good bargain these days. Used to be soy hulls and gluten feed were so inexpensive. Corn gluten feed still in our area is the best source of protein in terms of price, but corn grain is actually our best source of energy right now. And there is quite a bit of work was done in Ohio with feeding whole corn to cows as a drought practice, and it certainly does work good, and I'll mention that again here in a minute. And then there's all kinds of grain screenings and stuff like that are a little bit, you need to be a little suspect of them because of mycotoxins, weed seeds, and other stuff. But I'll just say there are many other alternatives you may have around you, and you should look for them and see what you can find. Be very careful about really wet stuff. A lot of times you can find some wet waste product that sounds like a great deal. Maybe it's free, but if it's really, really, really wet, it's kind of hard to deal with and usually not a very good feed value because of transportation. So think about, kind of what's locally available to you. Maybe you have some other kind of processing byproduct that's nearby where you are. Also, alternative roughages, and this ends up being a big part of what we do during a drought. We do have a lot of people that now harvest corn stover. You have to think about the cost of removing the nutrients from the land, and it actually ends up being about $40 an acre. But corn stover is a reasonably good feed, especially for dry cows. Needs some protein supplementation, but pretty palatable, pretty acceptable to them. We have a lot of drought damaged corn being harvested for silage in North Carolina right now. There may be some of that in West Virginia as well. So if there's somebody that grows corn for grain that that going to have a really poor crop, then it may be more valuable as silage. And a lot of times the insurance will allow you to salvage that crop as long as some is left for them to adjust the grain yield on that. So think about that if you have neighbors that are in the corn business. Forage sorghum, I threw that in there because it's about the same quality as that drought damaged corn silage. But it's something that you may want to think about if you do raise corn silage. It's much more drought tolerant, and for future years, it's something that is a real good opportunity for folks that do grow their own silage. Just a few other things to mention: cotton gin byproduct. A lot of this is being baled and can be shipped up out of Virginia and North Carolina. So that is there's a limited availability because not all of it's being baled, but certainly expect a lot more to move this year. Other crops: soybean hay. Soybean stover is not very good, but hay, we have found some years we lose the bean crop, and before the leaves drop, they'll cut that for hay, and that works pretty good. The others are probably not real viable alternatives for you down up where you are right now, because peanut hay is tough to move around, and cottonseed hulls, peanut hulls are good for fiber, but they're really not a very good substitute for hay when you need feed. Just a little bit about testing. You want to test all of the hay or byproducts that you buy. You just want to balance a ration, and you just can't guess. These things are quite variable, especially hay, as you know. And you need to be careful about nitrate in hay. Anything over 0.5% nitrate ion or 1,136 parts per million nitrate nitrogen should be approached with caution. So test that hay and look at nitrate before you ever feed it to a cow, because if it's high, it will cause them to abort, could cause them to die if it's really, really high. But especially if you're buying something like some Sudex hay or something, make sure you look at that nitrate level before you feed. And then, of course, balance a ration. This was one of the little things that I learned the last big drought we had, where we were bringing hay out of New York and Canada and all over the place. Meadow hay purchased out of New York turned out to test only 3 to 4% crude protein, and it was lower than corn stover in protein. And so those folks that bought that hay and paid a lot more than they could have got corn stover for wished that they had bought corn stover in that time. So just be aware that some of that quote meadow hay from up north is only cut one time a year, and it's just kind of not the greatest thing in the world, even though it looks green and it smells good and it seems like decent hay. And then finally, don't do a good job of feeding management. Don't skimp on feeder space. Make sure all the cows can eat. Don't let them get overly hungry. And manage body condition. I'll mention that in just a minute, because we all need to be tuned into that and be aware of this thing we call round bale syndrome. I haven't written about that in years, but if you have a few too many cows around a round bale feeder, somebody's going to slowly starve. And so when you are feeding hay, and especially if you're putting out hay once a day, all of the animals must be able to eat at the same time, comfortably, or else the least aggressive animals will gradually lose condition, and you will see that start to happen. And we see this every year with cows that are fed that way, but it's even more of an issue in the drought, where the hay feeding period is much longer. Again, I don't want to, this is very basic, but if you don't do body condition scoring and are a student of that, go and look at cows and think about, what's a cow supposed to look like, and don't get desensitized to thin cows. It's easy to do it this time of year. But we know that a cow nowadays about 75 to 100 pounds is a body condition score, and having those cows in good shape when they go into the drought is really critical to keeping them up. But not letting them lose below a body condition score of about 4 is really, really important for maintaining their value and their productivity. So this is a cow here that's a 5. You can kind of see a couple of their last ribs there. You see a little point on the hip, little bit indented around the tail head, but not really fat or thin there. But again, this is a really as when you start seeing your cows in this condition, as they probably all are this way now, or maybe even a little thinner, then you've got to make sure you don't let them get thinner. That's a 5. A cow like this is a 3, or maybe even a 2, a 3 on the way down. You see there was a pretty good sized calf at the side of this cow. The calf should have been taken off a lot earlier than this. The pasture should have been improved. This was not a drought scene. This was just poor management. But certainly, got any that look like that, it's time to get them in better shape, and you've already probably lost a lot of value in what the cow could have done for you, or what she would bring if you sold her. So let's delve a little bit into more feeding information here, because cows, if you do feed one of those you decide to go with that high concentrate thing, cows at least need some hay. And so we would suggest a minimum of about 4 pounds a day. They will still think they're starving, but that hay needs to be either unrolled or fed in such a way that all the cows get to eat it. And again, they don't just need an average of that. They all need to get a little hay in their belly. So you want to make sure your fences are good. The cows will think they're hungry, and they'll pester you to death because they never do fill up. But concentrate needs to be fed with plenty of feeder space so everybody can eat at the same time. And you may also see there that some of the more aggressive cows start to get fat. And so you want to, sometime midway through the feeding period, go ahead and sort the thin ones out if you have to, so that you can give them a little better attention. Again, I like to do this feeding out on pasture and use the opportunity to get some manure distribution and build that future pasture. So this is pictures from our farm with one of my nephews that used to work for us, and we chose this as our sacrifice pasture year. We don't always use the same pasture, but we have one in mind at the beginning of the year that we're going to use if we need it. And we want to make sure that, again, that hay is unrolled where animals can all eat at the same time. Now, if you are thinking about kind of future and doing things differently or whatever, we're doing a lot of alternative hay feeding. So we're doing both hay unrolling and bale grazing. And I know in West Virginia, hay unrolling is kind of a common practice. And it's easy to do if you have hills. And we've done that for a long time at home. And our building a long-term resilient system has a lot to do with us spreading the fertility around and growing grass with our hay and the manure that comes from that. So we have gone to a lightweight hay unroller. This would be ours is down there at the bottom of that picture. That's a Hay Be Gone. It's a little bit lighter duty than a Greg Judy hay unroller, but that type that you can pull behind a little four-wheel drive vehicle or an ATV can really give you a lot of flexibility. And you can see there that I've put hay right down a ridge that has had not much fertility in the past, a lot of broom sedge and a shallow soil. And by doing that, you can get some benefit out of that hay that you have to purchase and put out. Just a few scenes of corn stover feeding, and this is something that we again has become kind of a staple here in drought times. And if you do have neighbors that grow corn, and they may consider doing stover, because the stover should have more value than the fertilizer value plus the baling cost that they can get out of it. And so something to think about. One of the advantages of dry weather, stover is going to be better quality, assuming that we did have plenty of rain to get a corn crop. And I realize that that's not the case for all of your area, or even most of it maybe. So just a little bit on the economics of this, and then I'll quit. But I want to, I've just done some economic calculations of just the ingredient costs in this. This does not include your feeding labor or anything, but just doing some general regional costs for things like soybean hulls. You could feed cow some hay and soybean hulls. That ration would balance for a dry cow about $2.40 a day. Is the cost of that ration. You could do 29 pounds of corn stover and 3 pounds of a protein supplement. That's going to come in a little bit cheaper, and because I estimated the hay at 150 a ton up there for that top example. But the corn stover is going to be less expensive than the soy hulls would provide energy, and so that's only about a little over $2 a day. And then 30 pounds of corn stover and 2.5 pounds of a block or a lick or something like that is another alternative you could use, and that would be about $2.40 a day. Now, or you could pay for hay. Now, if your hay is $150 a ton, you can actually do it as cheap with hay as with any of those other systems. I estimated the corn stove there at 100 a ton, by the way. And so if you have to pay 200 a ton for the hay, though, then that you can do it with cheaper ingredients the other way. Now, the thing I want to encourage you to think about is that if I've got to feed cows for 60 days and I've got to feed them one of these rations, I very well may choose that $270 a day hay ration at $200 a ton, simply because I would not have to change my feeding management and what I know how to do. And I need to go through that calculation, because you could have to pay $300 a ton for the hay, and then it's just a no-brainer. Now, when we go into lactating cow rations, it's a little bit different, because they're going to eat a lot more they're going to need a lot more of that hay, and they're going to need some protein typically with typical hay. And so in this case, then the corn stover starts to look like maybe a little bit better ration. The one that I really kind of like that, some hay, some corn stalks, some concentrate, and that sort of a ration at that price is probably one that might keep you keeping some cows this year, given how much, how high calves are going to be next year. We certainly expect a very strong calf market, and so again, it's a question of how much you're willing to pay to keep the cows that you've been working on for a long period of time. So this is my last slide on this one, but make sure you get help with this, because there is a lot to it in terms of balancing the rations, making sure you get protein out there, make sure that, that this stuff doesn't pile up. Cows don't like to eat some of the stalks in the corn stover, but you'd be surprised if you make them work for a day, they'll clean up a lot of that. And so keeping them in pretty good condition so you can make them clean up every now and then is not a bad idea. And then we need to make sure we're getting enough vitamin A to the cows. Usually our minerals an adequate source, but that's really based on the idea that they will have green grass most of the time, and maybe not more than 90 days without it. So if you are in drought where you have brown grass for a very long period of time, you could have vitamin A problems in the winter. So just think about that. Again, think about who advises you, and look at your mineral and make sure that that you're getting enough vitamin A into those cows. So in summary, and kind of conclude all this, I like to think about drought management as something you do after the drought starts. Drought is expected, and so having a system in your mind that is resilient to short-term, it's a forage system that's resilient to short-term droughts, but also having that plan in your mind. Now, not everybody writes down a drought management plan. It's nice to do that, but sometimes you go within 8 years and you don't have a drought. Well, finding that written plan, I'd rather keep it in my mind all the time. You just do not overgraze. That's the thing that most people do wrong. They overgraze before they start figuring out what are we going to do, and by then, a lot of times you're not going to get any more grass production for the rest of the year. Cull and feed in a sacrifice area where you need to build soil fertility or renovate a pasture. Purchase the hay early, and as the drought lengthens, local hay resources will be completely gone, and you'll have to start hauling from farther and farther. So get that done early, test it, and balance a ration. And then at the end, and this is probably the most important thing, is just to be honest with yourself. Why did this drought hurt us so bad? Or maybe why did we get along better than our neighbors, or the other way around is usually the case, that somebody is doing something that maybe you've kind of looked at over the years, and then realize now that was something that might have been a good thing to do. So with that, I'm going to stop there, and hope that all came through clearly, Ronnie.
Yeah, Matt, we had a few little hiccups there occasionally, but it was good information, and I do have your PowerPoint slide, and if it's all right with you, I'll share that with our agents so we can make that available and folks can refresh their memory as we go through that. I think the chat is open. If you have any messages or questions you want to put in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we got time for just a few questions for Matt. And if there are any questions in the room, Alex and Jerry can field those, and we can get those included also.
My chat is still disabled, but I understand there was a list for possible cost sharing. I didn't know if, when it's appropriate to talk about that.
I think
Right. Well,
those...
I'll just say, and Ronnie, I'll jump in. There's a lot to come on this meeting, so let's go move along. I'm going to stay on, and then I'll be happy to jump in here whenever, as you see more and more what's available. I know there's a lot on your minds, and a lot there's a lot to think about. So just be aware that there's a lot that you can do, and it's time to get to it.
Kim, a couple of those folks will be on near the end, but the quick information piece is to visit with your local FSA office and your local conservation district. They can help you with some of those pieces, but we'll go ahead, and Alex, I'm going to turn this back over to you since you're in the room, and everybody else that's there to speak with us this evening will be in the room. So back to Moorfield.
Thank you, Ronnie. All right. Next up, we have Brad Smith, who's going to talk about grazing and water management. I'm going to take me a second to pull up his slides. It's not letting me share. There we go. All right, Brad.
All right, we're gonna very quickly, how do I? Hold on. Advance. Okay. Very quickly review some grazing principles. Matt already talked about adaptive grazing management. We need to be able to adapt what we normally do to manage the drought. During these critical times is a good time for us even to improve our grazing management and realize some of the benefits from more intensive management in our grazing systems.
We're not seeing any slides, Alex.
Not seeing any.
All right, let me. It says I'm sharing. Let's stop and start again. How about now?
Can you see the slide
Yes.
now, Ron?
Yes.
Very good. Still there?
Yeah, go up and swap the display. We're seeing both, all the notes and those kind of things.
For that.
There we go. That's it.
There. Sorry, everybody. We're tech challenged sometimes.
All right. As Matt already mentioned, basically we can summarize this talk on grazing management by reminding everyone to close gates. We don't want them covering a big boundary, eating every little sprig that's growing and coming up. We can save our pastures for when there is enough regrowth there, and they will regrow when we get some rain. We'll see some compensatory growth, just like we do with livestock, compensatory gain in livestock, if we manage them correctly. Those grasses will jump up when we get some rain if we haven't depleted the energy reserves, the sugars in that root system. So, reminder, overgrazing is when an animal bites a plant before it's fully recovered from a previous grazing event. All too often we think of overgrazing as overstocking a pasture. density, stock density is a good thing if we manage how long they're on that area. We need to provide plants with adequate time to build energy reserves to support that root growth. Failure to do that is the primary reason we have weeds, and the weeds are becoming more and more of a problem in our drought situations. So if you're going to have to start feeding hay, and many of you are already, if you're feeding, consider putting a hot wire across part of that paddock, or at least closing the gates. Get them confined to a smaller area while you're feeding, and give the rest of your paddocks a chance to recover. Recovery period fluctuates throughout the growing season. Of course, this year, our primary limiting factor is water. We need some water for them to grow. But once we get some, we'll see some growth if we manage them correctly. If we've overgrazed them and kept biting them off, we're not going to see any growth. Recovery period's going to be real slow if we've overgrazed them. We need to use short graze periods when we can. Cool season plants begin to recover around 3 days post-grazing. So to get the most benefit out of a management intensive grazing system, if we can rotate every 3 days, we're going to realize the most benefits. If we're using a system that's more realistic for many of us in rotating animals once a week, we can certainly see benefits from that, but we've got to keep those graze periods short. Match stocking rate to carrying capacity. Right now our carrying capacity has decreased to the point that we need to depopulate. We need to call some animals. Already mentioned, use the highest stock density practical. If we're having to haul water and or feed to the animals, if we can restrict them to a sacrifice lot, sacrifice paddock, think about where we're placing that feed and that water. Utilize feed for our nutrients, put it in areas you normally can't get over in the spring of the year when it's too wet or that are too steep to spread on. If you can unroll some bales there or feed in those areas, get the benefits from those nutrients. And this, you use the largest herd possible, consistent with good animal husbandry. And Dr. Matlick and Jerry will talk a little bit more about that, but that way we can achieve the stock density we need. We can provide the rest that some of those paddocks need to be able to get the growth that we hope to as soon as we get some rain. Thinking about water. Water is the most important nutrient for livestock health and productivity. We have to start hauling it. We quickly figure out how much they need. Most of us don't realize until we have to start hauling water how much cow nursing a calf is going to need each day. Water intake is somewhere between 8 and 15% body weight. That's 1 to 2 gallons per 100 pounds live weight. And it's primarily a function of temperature. Dry matter intake, what they're consuming, and temperature. When we've had heat indexes over 100 the last week, that water consumption has been an awful lot. Pregnant cows or lactating cows, cows with calf by their side, when it's 90 degrees, are consuming close to 17 gallons of water. We need to think about the behavior of those animals as well. when we're providing water. If they're having to trail very far to that water, a lot of times our calves aren't going to separate from the cows. They aren't going to wait to get water. If we have enough there and the cows leave, or if we have a slow return on some tanks, those calves are getting pushed out. We need to think about making sure those calves get plenty of water. This chart just shows again temperature only goes up to 90 degrees. We've seen a lot of 100+ degree days here lately. Watering systems. Think about calves being able to drink. If we have to start hauling water, make sure troughs aren't too high. Make sure they're spread out enough that cows aren't crowding the calf out, and that they're getting enough. Water quality. Think about water quality as well. It is critical, and as we get into hauling treated water, chlorinated water, something they're not used to, there's going to be an aversion there. Some of those calves aren't going to want to drink. We need to make sure they get used to that, but we've got to make sure the quality of that water is good enough that we're not affecting the growth and the gain of those calves. When we're developing water sites, we need to think about where we're placing them and how they work into our grazing plan. Think about grass health and productivity, pasture health and productivity, animal performance, and nutrient distribution. Return on investment, it pays to add water. So if we have site in one corner of the pasture where animals have to go there, we're going to have a lot of trailing to that site. We're going to see very short forages close to the water. They're going to be more mature further away. So if we can, let's utilize our water distribution as we're hauling water to get the animals where they need to be. On those uplands where there's more growth, we can use the water to help place the animals where they need to be. And then finally, we see a lot of weeds from the disturbed area around water. Already mentioned water quality. We need to be concerned about nitrates in the water. We need to be concerned about phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, sulfates, the dissolved solids in the water. So think about quality as well. Mentioned we can put animals where we need them. If we move our feed and our water to where we can utilize them the best. To summarize, and we've got to make sure we've got plenty of clean water at all times. There's no one solution. We've got alternatives. Investing in water pays normally. So think about, in this drought situation, what do I want to do to improve my grazing management plan in the future when it gets dry again? And that's something we can't do many times all at once. So we may want to break water development down and develop those in stages. NRCS has the technical help and can help you develop a plan, even if there's not funding available for cost share. They can provide some help and assistance in helping you develop a plan. As far as paddock layout, water should be within 800 feet of the livestock, so we don't have that trailing a long ways away. That's going to improve our utilization. It's going to help us distribute the nutrients to where we need them. This is a graph of cow piles distance away from water. It just shows the heavy concentration we get around watering areas. Questions, comments? Most all of this that you're going to hear today is just a review. We don't have any magic bullets how to manage this. It's just a review. Get you thinking about how I can manage and how I can improve. Any questions on the Zoom?
I'm not seeing any right now, Brad, so we can go ahead and I'll continue to keep an eye on those.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Darren. All right.
Darren and Jerry are up next. And we'll take a quick break.
The dynamic duo.
So I was told Jerry and I had 15 minutes together, not a piece to get together, 15 minutes. How long, if you know Jerry, I better go first.
Archer, right?
Or I could let him go and then I wouldn't have to talk.
That's why I'm letting you go, because I'm not sure either.
How do I get to that? How do I do that? I have Dave Miller from Eastern helping me with tech support now, everybody. So thank Dave. Saving us. Ronnie, are you seeing just the slides?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
We didn't share it yet.
I got a break. I'm the bosses.
You have to do that all again.
Switch to view, and you should be good. There we go.
Got that.
We're there.
All right. So mainly what I'm focusing on was the calves and the early weaning. Okay, so as our forages are disappearing, and we got to do something with those calves. I mean, we have two options. We can feed cattle and feed while those calves are still those cows are still lactating and those calves are still nursing. I gotta get somewhere where I can see what I wrote. Or we can wean those calves and get them off those cows, which is pretty highly recommended at this point in time. So when we wean early, we really, my soapbox here tonight, and I gotta speak quick, is stress. Okay, how to manage stress in these calves is really important, I think. Okay, so we do want to vaccinate them. I don't know if there's a pointer on here, it don't matter. So we want to vaccinate and deworm those calves, preferably not at weaning. Okay, these calves are going to be stressed enough. I prefer to do this pre-weaning. Even if I want to do that twice, I would like to do that 2 pre-weaning shots as opposed to pre-weaning and a weaning. So anytime that you're going to work those calves at weaning, it's going to add tremendous stress, especially when you're weaning early. Okay, so let's try to vaccinate those calves early and do it at pre-weaning. We also should probably be treat feeding these calves. I don't mean you have to put a steer stuffer out there and let them go hog wild, but at least get them used to eating something. Okay, because these cows are in a lactation period right now. If you calved in March, they're in a mid lactation to a late mid lactation. And so those calves are getting a lot of milk. If the cows are in decent shape, they're getting a lot of milk and they should be eating grass at the same time. But if you pull them now versus if you pulled them on a normal year in October or November, those calves are going to have eaten a lot more forage and that later weaning time than they would have now, right? So as opposed to, if that makes any sense. And so getting those calves eating, creep feeding them, whether that's feeding the cows and having enough bunk space that the calves can get up there and eat too, or putting out a creep feeder and having those calves get used to eating. I love fence line weaning. That's not always possible, but especially when you're early weaning, fence line weaning would work really, really the best in this situation. Because we're going to minimize the stress on that calf especially, but we also can minimize the stress on a cow that's already stressed. Okay. Minerals and then clean water. So it's already been talked about, but that those tubs. So even if you have automatic waters in a pen that these calves are going to go into, we want to make sure that these calves have tubs to go to. So, you know, we do this a lot. And at the bull test station and other places, even after the cattle have been weaned already, if we can get them to go drink out of that tub, drinking is very important. So important that you have 48 hours of those calves from the time they enter that pen that they're either going to get more stressed or they're going to start to settle in. Okay. And if we have water, good clean water where they can get to and not have to look for it, it's going to be much better. I mentioned deworming there. Obviously, if you're going to dry lot these calves, which you're probably going to have to, then we probably need to hit them with a white wormer before we clean them out before they go on the dry lot. Yeah. So again, my big point is stress. So stressful events in cattle: weaning, shipping, vaccination, commingling, castration, dehorning, weather and environment, stress, and then ration change and lack of feedstuffs. Okay, so for me, I would like to make 1 to 2 stressors at a time being my max. Okay, so if I back up and look at that, if I wean and have to move those cattle and I vaccinate them, that's 3 stressors at one time. And 3 stressors are going to give you issues. Okay, so if I can limit that to 1, possibly 2 at the most, I'm going to get along better with those calves. Okay, you're going to see, that's when you're going to start seeing BRD and other things pop up. Okay, so stress does impact the immune system. We know that. We know that stress negatively impacts the immune system. So diseases such as, in just a couple examples, bovine respiratory disease, we do tend to see more coccidia when cattle get stressed, and calves get stressed. You start to see, if you're not well vaccinated, some Clostridium diseases. And then if you get a rumen acidosis and other things, you might see some bloat and whatnot. All right. My other big point is when we vaccinate, it is very, 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 and I've probably said this for 10, 15 years, and maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. I apologize if you have. When we vaccinate, we can't do that on a day like today. If you vaccinate on a day like today, you might as well, you wasted your time. The efficacy of that vaccine is going to be pretty low, because those cattle coming up into that chute, if you went and took every temperature of every animal that come up in that chute, it's going to be pretty high. Okay, especially if they're standing there for any period of time in the sun. Okay, so we're going to try to vaccinate in the cool of the morning or the evening. This is my big soapbox for the rest of my career. We got to quit doing things on a schedule, and I know that's hard because we have jobs in town, a lot of us, and that's hard. We got to do it when we're available. We got to start looking at the weather ahead of time and planning when we want to wean these calves, right? And I'm not even getting into moon phases or anything like that. I'm talking about weather, heat, humidity. These calves and these cattle they're vacuums for heat, right? And they're going to carry it through even vaccinating in the evening, they're going to carry that temperature into the evening, into the night. Okay, so I really, really, really want to look for the best date that I can vaccinate those cattle. And really, if I'm going to aim at a temperature, it needs to be 86 degrees and under. Several years ago, when Pfizer was Pfizer and not Zoetis, they did some research and they vaccinated calves at different temperatures. And if they got under 86 degrees, the efficacy of that vaccine was much higher. So 86 degrees, if we're looking at a benchmark, we want to be under that to vaccinate. All right. My vaccine tips: keep vaccines cool while you're working, leave a clean needle in the bottle, 86 degrees and under. Follow label, this is just BQA jargon, follow BQA guidelines, check withdrawal times. And then we got to watch our 3 gram negatives at one time and then use opposite sides of the neck. Use clean syringes, disposable, reusable, clean them with 180 degrees. And clean needles, we could have a discussion for 2 hours about that. Rotating needles every 10 is what BQA says. If you have a concern about disease, whether that be leukosis or other diseases, we should be switching every cow and calf. Okay, especially every cow. All right, you all know this. This is nothing new. For that calf-free weaning shot, we need to give our virals IBR, BVD, PI3, BRSV, Clostridial 7-way, and a Pasteurella vaccine. If you add lepto into that program, which some of them call for, that's a gram negative and Pasteurella is a gram negative. So you got 2 gram negatives. Clostridium is a gram positive, but it's a pretty harsh gram positive. So I don't always love to do that. We can talk about that later. And then if we're going to do any banding or cutting at this point in time, if you haven't yet, we need to be given some tetanus vaccine at this age. Okay. And there's our gram negatives: lepto, Pasteurella, pink eye, scours, vibrio, somni, salmonella, J5, and then clostridiols are gram positive, but kind of harsh. Key points: minimize stress, pre-weaning vaccine, quality dewormer, creek feed, fence line weaning, fill those water tubs up, and no more than 1 or 2 stressors at a time. Now, Sherry's, any questions? That was quick as I've done.
Well, what are some things, so we have, shared conditions. What are some things next year that we have, that what we have right now, that we need to look for as problems? I think Matt Ford mentioned vitamin A, might be a problem, but are the things that we're going to see next year for calves that are going to affect the stress?
Absolutely, we can. Depending on what type of situation you get, we gotta keep those minerals in front of them. But some things like vitamin A and stuff, we don't get a lot in our minerals because they don't last long. So, I'm not gonna promote products, but there's products we can use to help with that. That might be able to help us in that situation, but I mean, time will tell, you know, it depends on how bad your grass got, what condition of those cows are, right? If those cows are losing condition and they're pregnant and we keep them, we're gonna see problems. So I think that's where our calling has to happen. You know, we're so used to every cow that's pregnant is gonna stay, and maybe this year that can't be the case. We gotta really look at that cat. We gotta look at those teeth, we gotta look at her body condition, we gotta really make some decisions. But I think, yes, I think we could, and I think you could use some products, stuff like multi-med and other things that we might be able to use that can help us out. But certainly keeping those minerals in front of them has got to be top. Other questions?
I got a question for you. We done a lot of testing with bovine leukosis and all our herds, and we kind of identified which ones are carriers and whatnot. You know, we're kind of watching them pretty close because if they lose that body condition score, they don't tend to recover as quickly. So, you know, I was thinking about that as a kind of what to look for pulling. But do you know anything on how that affects stressors? Because on how that drought stresses them on that bovine leukosis.
Oh, so just like that's in that slide, anytime you get a stress like that, you're gonna see increased disease. So especially if they're already carrying it, right? So if it's already there and they get a stressor, absolutely, you're gonna exacerbate it and you're gonna start seeing that cow pop up with some tumors and lose body condition and have issues. Absolutely. Yeah. And Jerry, I think he's gonna talk about body condition.
I will a little bit, but we'll take a break first.
Oh, okay. Other questions?
What's the best way to do it? We can fix on tax.
So,
Repeat the question. repeat the question, Darren, please.
All of them or this one?
This one.
Okay, I was kidding. I couldn't repeat all of them. So the question was, how do we, what's the best way to control the ticks on pasture? So, insecticides, not dewormers. I think we had that talk earlier this, winter. Insecticides, not dewormers. So, there's several products out there that are labeled for flies, but you don't see a lot labeled for ticks. So if you go read labels, you don't see a whole lot of tick labels, but we've got to use an insecticide, a permethrin type insecticide to control them, and that's, back rubber spray in those cows, getting them in, pour on them, things like that's about the only way it works. The injectable dewormers are not the way to do it. They do help for a little while, but they don't seem to last, and that's not the way to do it. Other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
And I
Darren.
took way more than my time.
No, you did a great job. All right, we're gonna take a quick. How long is it? 10 minutes?
15.
10,
5, whatever you think.
10. We're gonna take a quick 10-minute break. Yes, to use the restroom, grab a snack and do some tech adjustments. So if everybody can join us back at 7:30, it's a little less than 10 minutes.
So as we're sitting here waiting for folks to come back online, Northfield, I guess, Matt, is North Carolina preparing to take a pretty good hit from Debbie? You're still there.
I am. I am. No, well, no, we don't think so, but it's gonna be a lot of rain is the only problem. And where I am, we're probably gonna be okay. It's only gonna be 4 or 5 inches maybe, but down the southern part of the state and on into South Carolina, they're saying as much as 30 inches. So,
Wow.
yeah, I think it's well, things are not normal, Ronnie. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can argue about why it's happening, but we were so hot and dry in June, it looked like the desert. And we had 12 inches of rain in May. And so I knew in my gut it wasn't that dry, but it was, 95, 98 degrees every day, and it never rained for a month, and so it looked like the end of the world. Then it started raining. Now it's wet. And then if we get this, we're going to be completely flooded.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it won't be the first time we've done drought and flood stuff at the same time, though, I guess. So
Right. Yeah, I think everyone's hoping we get a little bit of that later on this week.
yeah, it does not look like it though.
No, no, it looks like it's going to stay to the east.
Yeah. Yeah, and we haven't had the big drought since 2007 is when we had the last, terrible one here. That was, it was a epic drought of a lifetime, hopefully.
Yeah.
But we have had flood and drought in the same year several times.
Right. Yeah. This widespread in West Virginia, I think 99 was the last time we were at this level.
Oh, so it has been a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can't overemphasize the importance of putting in a water system with a good well. Because boy, surface waters are, springs here are becoming pretty unreliable.
Yes.
Getting ready to start back with Jerry Yates.
Darren, you did a very good job.
Well, thank you.
High points and loop and fan.
I did the best I could, best I could.
I'll slow it down, don't worry, Garrett, I'll take care of it. I'll slow us up a little bit, don't worry.
We'll share, we'll make her full screen. Sorry, I'm, it's like right with the left hand on this.
This.
That's true. Remember, they're in town. You're on a hot mic.
You tell me to mute it. Ronnie, you look good?
Yes.
We'll jump right in. I think what I would tell you is this too shall pass, but always remember, it doesn't matter how young or how old they are, we don't want to make anything worse. So we're always trying to keep our BQA principles in mind. They're never too old or too young to create a quality defect. And so Matt's covered a lot of the things we did, but an awful lot of how we're going to get through this problem, the same way we get through a lot of other problems. That's relationships. And one of the best relationships you can have is with your veterinarian. Like the guy who just went before me, my veterinarian, obviously. So if you need to have a very strong, solid veterinary client-patient relationship, the best thing you can do immediately is pre-check cows. That will pay faster than anything. Matt's went over a lot of this, but what I would tell you is that every time you need to do your employee evaluation. And every time that cow's in the chute, evaluate her. So if you're getting cows pulling blood to check, or if you're pre-checking cows, she's in the chute, there's some things you gotta look at. Yeah. Nobody ever, before anybody mowed any hay this year, when we had a little rain, everybody put new knives in their disc spine. And so look at that cow's teeth. If she's missing a bunch of knives in the disc spine, she can't cut the hay. So check the teeth, check udders, eyes, bad structures. And here's the other thing. You can't outrun cows anymore. I don't think anybody in here's got a gold medal in Olympics. So this is a time for those bad acting cows, those poor performer cows, bottom line cows. They gotta go. Everybody's covered body condition score. We won't talk about that. But if you take this drought as an opportunity to call the bottom part of your cow herd off, you will leave this drought with a stronger, more productive cow herd than what you have. Calves are still our product. Don't abandon your marketing plan, but you got to wean early. Darren covered that very well. Corn's going to be cheap this fall, folks. This is a great opportunity to get in a relationship, find somebody to feed them for you, partner on ownership. That you can seize the opportunity to improve your herd. You've got the chance now to do that. Now, the big questions we've heard so far are really centered around what we're gonna do with this corn we're not gonna shell. There's a big concern about nitrate poisoning. And it's great potential in high stress crops that have had fertility, whether it's litter or manure or chemical fertilizer put on. Most of that concentration is in the lower part of the stalk. Nitrate levels in leaves are in a 64, 60 to 80 parts per million. In the lower third of the stalk, it's 5,000 parts per million. So if you're gonna now there are tests we can do. If you go online and search for infield nitrate tests, you can buy them. You can buy a kit for $30. You get 5 tests out of them. If you're going to test, you need to test a representative sample of what's in the feed. Same thing when you take forage samples. Test a representative sample of what's out there. If you have nitrate problems, the best way, doesn't mean you can't feed that. The solution to pollution is what? Dilution. So you've got to mix something else in that product, the PMR, to get that nitrate level down to a safe level to feed it. If you ensile it, now I know a lot of people go out to green chop. You're going to be feeding green chop. That's your biggest concern. If you ensile it, you can eliminate half the nitrate level right off the bat. Then you let it go through the ensiling process. Sometimes a little more. Now here's a couple of good fact sheets. You'll be able to find this presentation. There's 2 really good fact sheets on price and drought stress corn. What's the old rule of thumb for how we sell silage?
Green prices, right?
8 to 10 times the price of bushel of corn, what a ton of silage is worth. Well, that's not gonna work so well for you. There's another good one. I can't figure out how to share. Adam Boner shared a PDF with Virginia Tech that covers the same kind of stuff. We'll figure out, Ronnie, somehow you gotta help me how to get that into the deal. The other thing I tell you is Matt covered this very well. Byproduct feeds are byproducts for a reason. Something's been removed from them. So test everything. There's often a nutrient or a mineral imbalance in there. So you've got to make sure that what you're feeding is what you need to be. It's covering what we want. Now, it's time to really take a hard look at the bottom part of those cows. If she had a bad calf last 2 years in a row, you know what she's gonna have next year? A bad calf. Where'd she go? The town. Record high cull cow prices. Now's the time to cash in on some of that value. And if you got if you're missing, I ain't got no pointer, do we? So if you're missing sections in the mowing machine, what are you not cutting? You're not cutting grass. That cow's got a 4-inch cutter bar she's harvesting grass with. So one tooth out of that's a lot different than one tooth out of your 10-foot cutter bar. Body condition, Matt covered well. I'm good, Alex. So here's where we want. You want to stay somewhere in this 4 or 5 range. These cows that are getting up on this end, those are those cows Matt talked about. The favorite cow. Maybe it's your wife's cow. Sometimes you have to keep her anyway. I don't know, that happens. These cows, best cow on the farm, right? She ain't a calf in 3 years, but by God, she looks good. Don't get sucked into that. Evaluate your cows like they work for you, because they do. They're your factor. They're working for you. So get rid of them. Now, a couple other things to be cognizant of with these temperatures. All these slides you'll be able to have access to. This is really good. You can't pack these trailers as full in this kind of weather. And so these temperature range charts are in there. Mature cow phone, if we're gonna haul cows to town, don't haul too many at one time. You get lots of, think about where we have problems that cause a black eye for our industry. One of the best places, is everybody's driving down the road now is a reporter, because what they got in their pocket? Cell phone. Lameness, the fit for transport is something that we're paying a lot more attention to the beef industry now. You can't sell down cows, but thinking about the average travel distance, what do you think the average travel distance last beef quality audit was for a market cow on the way to a harvest facility?
50 miles.
Little over 600 miles. The average travel distance for cull cows. So will that cow make the trip? Of course, ambulatory animals we're never going to do. What I would want to leave everybody with is that we have an opportunity to look at this drought two ways. We can look at it as the sky's falling, chicken little, or we can take an opportunity to look at this and how can we better position ourselves to manage the next drought? What can I do, especially with record high prices we got right now, to cash in on some value? Can you find somebody to back run your heifers for you this fall instead of trying to feed them for yourself? Can you buy replacement heifers? Is it time to trade out some genetics? And like I said, if she had a bad calf last year, she had a bad calf this year, you know what she's gonna have next year? A bad calf. So critically evaluate your employees. They work for you. Now, I know there's times in the winter when we keep hauling out hay and we're hauling water right now. We think we work for our cows. But at the end of the day, I want you to think that what you are is you're the foreman and the cows work for you. If they aren't pulling their weight, they're not paying their bill. And if they aren't paying their bill this year, this set of resources in a resource limited environment, then they need to become the paycheck that's going to help you get through this drought and manage into when stuff's going to green up, it's going to rain again. Questions for me? All right,
That was
good deal.
record time there, Jerry.
That is definitely right.
All right, next on our agenda, we have finances and communication. So I was going to invite farm credit folks up. Is the gentleman from PCB still here?
He's the bang guy behind.
Yeah, I don't know.
Luke, you here?
Okay, we have Trey Kaiser, Greg Mitchell, and Ivy Ward. I'll let you guys do any further introductions and no PowerPoint, right?
No problem.
Okay.
Correct. I'm gonna start off, we're gonna tag team a little bit, not gonna take a lot of time though. First off, communicate with your lender. Jerry talked about the, BCPRs, I'm gonna suggest something else, a LCR, lender client relationship. Talk to us in times of stress. If you're not having regular conversations with your lender, you need to be. Really, you need to be even outside of those times of stress. In times of stress, you need to be talking more. If your operation is pretty complex, if your financial situation is a little complex, or you're more complex, talk to your lender more. I would suggest, 2 times a year minimum. That's if you're not borrowing money right now. That you need to have a conversation with us. And I'm not just saying Greg and I, but whoever you borrow money from, whoever manages your finances, your financial team, whoever they are, you need to be meeting twice a year. If you fall in one of those more complex categories, it may be once a month. It may be once a week. Some people in this room, I think I need to talk to 3 or 4 times a week. But with that said, during these times, if you talk to us early and often, we're gonna have more opportunities to help get you through this financially. Tell you what, with that, I'm gonna skip a beat and pass it along another fact right.
See, you wanna have your tax returns and your financial statement up to date, so whenever you go talk to your lender, you can get a complete application in there and you can get an answer as quick as possible. You wanna go ahead, before you need it, get your line of credit set up with your lender. And so whenever you do run on to availability of hay or a feed source, that you can write your check out and roll, and you don't have to run to your bank first. And the other thing I'd like to say is that, to deal with an established lender that knows agriculture, that knows the ups and downs in the industry and has been there, and they'll work with you.
Just another thing to bring your attention to up front, we do have drought resource guides. There's a few left. I know some people have already went ahead and grabbed them. This just goes through, there's different resources for West Virginia, Virginia and Maryland, because those are the 3 states we cover. And then also additional national resources. I know the drought monitor was something that was talked about earlier. That link is on here. And then the other side also has some mental health, tips and tricks, and if you scan that QR code, it goes to a mental well-being resource guide. That's another great resource guide to check out. I know that that's something that's been covered, and we're going to continue talking about that, but this is just a quick little guide, and our website has all of these links listed as well that are easy to access in case, so that way they're all in one place instead of scrambling all over the place.
Greg mentioned lines of credit. It's handy having one, don't abuse it. Utilize that wisely, especially in times of stress. In times like we're seeing right now, your repayment source may be a great plan, but in a drought, you may see it dry up and blow away. Whether it's cattle or crops or what have you, in times of stress, by drought, we don't have hardly any control over that. Manage those finances wisely. Contact us before your payment comes due that you're gonna have trouble with. Not when your payment is due and you have trouble with. We're gonna have a lot more options, leading up to that point versus when we're behind that 8 ball. We could probably ramble on for quite a while, but unless, you all have anything else, I think that kind of covers the highlights of what they wanted to touch on. Open to questions if you have any.
So there's something in the chat. Ronnie, can you read to us what's in the chat?
Lost.
You lose Ronnie? Let's see if I can get it to one work from here.
I'm here. I'm here.
We're not in the business to foreclose, to send past due letter.
Chat's clear. Chat's clear.
Carry on.
We're not in that business. We're in the business to lend money. We sell money for a living. What makes the world go around is people make their payments. The world is not perfect. We know agriculture, we understand the ups and downs. But it takes your communication with us to be able to put together a plan to get through stressful times. So long and short, I'll leave you with that.
Other questions for financial questions? Everybody will be around after the meeting too, so.
All right, next we have Dwayne Bishop from Department of Ag, who's going to talk about marketing and risk management. You just have that one chart you want to.
Yeah, just wait a minute.
Okay.
So I've heard a lot about feedstuffs and stuff tonight in early meeting. And this, that, and the other, and the one thing that scares me more than anything is cheap corn in a cow-calf situation. And Dr. Matlick talked about a creek feeder. Scares me plumb to death. Now, why is that? Any idea? Bloat death. But me as a guy that's helping people market those calves, why does that scare me? They're too damn fat. Just get it out there and say it. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean you need to feed an umpteen amount of corn to your calves. Another thing I would say about a creek feeder, I personally like taking the creek feeder off of the cage, putting the gate up and building a pen around the creek feeder. So you don't have that 1 or 2 or 3 hogs that's constantly in the creek feeder. Then we're talking about bloat, right?
Yeah, I like
Right, acidosis.
the steer stuffer. I'm not saying that's what you need to do.
Right. But, and also, I've seen people where they hand feed them. You're gonna go out and check them anyway in stress conditions like this. So hand feed them, get them used to coming into the creek pen. And then when it's time to wean, you shut the gate, and guess what? You reduce the stress of chasing them, getting them in the barn, et cetera, et cetera. All you gotta do is back the trailer up and get them to where you're going, right? Another reduce the stress. So please be vigilant in your creek feeding, because I know you're gonna do it and you probably need to do it. I personally would rather invest the feed into the calf than the cow, because obviously you're getting gain. Correct? But just because we're getting gain doesn't mean we put white meat on, we put red meat on. Okay? So calves that are really fleshy, especially these 500 pounders, 400 pounders, they do not do the next person any good. I assure you, you will get discounted for that. Okay? We have a gentleman and their family in the back. I know backgrounds of cow cattle. Guarantee you he doesn't want them fleshy. Okay? So be vigilant, talk to your feed representatives, talk about just a basic 14% pellet, hand feed it, don't have to self feed it. Okay? That's something I have a pet peeve about. Believe me, I used to do it. I did it myself. And I wanted to put those pounds on, but just because we're putting pounds on, are we putting the right kind of pounds on? That's the question. All right. Now, if we put this chart up, how many of y'all have a house? Raise your hand. You have a house, right? Tractors. Trucks. How many of you have insurance on all those? I hope to God you have insurance on all of it. All right, how many of you have cows and calves? Right, that's why we're here, right? How many of you have insurance on those calves? Not for death, but for what's happening in the market right now. I don't see any hands up. How many of you have taken advantage of risk management, whether you have 1 calf or 10,000 calves? Anybody? I see 1, see 2. Why in God's name would you not insure the one thing that is the income on your farm, but you insure the thing that is the output? Can everybody see this chart? This is a September futures for feeder cattle in the last 3 months. I just pulled it off DTN just a few minutes ago, sent it to Alex. See this? March 15th. Futures, September cattle, 270. That's based on an 8-weight calf. 270. How many would like to get 270 for their 8 weights? Raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, I don't know what's wrong with you. Okay? Look what happened until today. What's happened in the last week? We have crashed. We have, excuse my French, shit our pants. If you look at the stock market, it has done the same. If you look at the Japanese market, I heard on the way over, Japan shut down their stock market today. Why? It was crashing. They wanted it to stop. They wanted the bleeding to stop. We lost $7 and something on October or some futures. I forget which month it was, just today. Okay? This is a prime example of why I have preached for years in my former jobs, in this job, of doing risk management of some sort. Had you sold or bought an LRP back here for your September calves, roughly 270 to roughly 240. We're just going to say that for easy figure. $30 a hundredweight. $30 a hundredweight, folks. How much is that? Just going up the tractor and trailer load. What's 30 times 500? $15,000. We lost tractor and trailer load of cattle, $15,000 from March till now. How much hay could you have bought in this drought for $15,000? Quite a bit, huh? Even though it may be costing you $100 a bale. Up in my country, I can get hay for $30 to $40. Why? Because they don't know what they got. So what an LRP does is basically gives you a floor. It is not a floor for your specific cattle. It is a floor on the Board of Trade. Now, when I say that kind of stuff, people get, oh my God, I don't understand it. What's that mean? You're using this to take advantages of black swans like this. So, had you sold or bought an LRP back here, or even here, or here, guess what? That roughly, Sherry, help me out, $2,500 would have cost roughly $3,000 on the tractor and trailer load rates on your insurance policy. Okay. Let's say 3,000. From here to here, your insurance policy cost you 3,000. You made 15. You netted how much? 12. $12,000 is what you netted. How much hay can that buy? How much fuel can that buy? How many insurance installments does that pay on that fancy brand new John Deere tractor you bought? Okay? If you buy that now, let's inverse it, because I know people's minds what they're thinking. Well, what if the market goes up? I don't care. You know why I don't care? Because back here, you needed a plan, and we were talking about a plan. That plan includes what is my cost of production? How much am I going to get out of them? Where do I need to make a profit? You know what farmers' biggest issue is that I see every day? What if it goes higher? What if it goes higher? So what if it goes higher? Did you make a profit? Yep. You made a profit. Did you make as much as you could have? Nope. But you made a profit. Now, you didn't buy that LRP. And guess what? Let's say that's below your cost of production. Because the reason I'm saying that, these guys that have got 5, 6, 10, 20, 50,000 acres of corn, guess what they're doing right now? They might be buying cattle, but there's less of those farmer feeders around. They're shitting themselves too. Because it is way below their cost of production. I'm sorry for the vulgar, but I've got to make you get it through your head. If there was a year that this explains LRPs risk management. This is the year, and I knew it was coming. What happened in 14?
15.
It was 15, sorry, 15. We had the 14 was the ray of sunshine, right? 15, we had the dark dungeon days.
16 from the market.
16, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it collapsed, right? If you didn't learn a lesson from then, you don't learn a lesson from now, you will never learn the lesson. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm telling you, we are in a world. Why did I bring up Japan? Why do we talk about the euro? We are in a world economy, folks. Agriculture is we are looked upon for agriculture. Okay? They look at us to produce food. That means we are in a world economy. I don't care if you have 10 cows or 10,000. Your calves could end up in the world economy and most likely will. Reason I say this, I had the opportunity a year ago to tour the JDS plant in Souderton, Pennsylvania. The girl that gave us the tour was the head of, or maybe second in charge of quality assurance. This girl was sharp. She knew that plant like the back of her hand. You know what she told us? How much of that product that goes through that plant, mind you, they kill 2,000 head a day, which is a small plant in the grand scheme of things. How much product out of that plant do you think went overseas? 10 guesses? 6. You're closer. 50%, she said minimum. So you're about right. So you take, I don't know how many cows are represented in this room. A good many cows, right? There's a good chance that 50% of your calves will end up on a boat going overseas. And that's why I say we are in a world economy. And until we realize that as producers and understand the scope, what we're doing, just because you have 10 cows does not mean you don't matter. I have a handful of cows. They're more my daughters and my sister-in-laws because they play with them and they're fun, but they gotta pay for themselves, like Jerry was talking about. They got to pay for themselves. Okay? So, good resource. Farm Credit has a gentleman, Jason Wisecarver, that I'm familiar with. I think you probably have more than that, correct?
Ralph Stickman has taken over. a little
Ralph
bit from
Stickman?
him.
Okay.
Yeah, because Jason.
Okay. So anyway, they have good resources. They can help you with LRPs. LRPs are the simplest mode of risk management because it allows you to work with calves, stockers, feeders, fat cattle, the whole realm of your product. Whereas if you're dealing with a broker and you are truly trying to play the market, you basically have to have a fund sitting there. This is how these people do it. They have a fund sitting there for margin calls. So let me give you an example. If I sold a hedge, everybody's heard of a hedge. Okay. If I sold a hedge here at roughly 255, let's say, and when it hit 265, they had to pull money out of my hedge fund to pay for that difference. Okay. You have to have a floating amount of money there. So you're playing the market. But then guess what? If I sold it here, now guess what's happening? They're putting money into my account. unless I get out of the hedge. If I got scared and was dumb, and so you don't want to do that, bought my hedge back, then I'd have just lost that money, that transaction. Had I just left it alone, left my fund, my hedge fund sit there and let my broker take care of it, he may have called me at some point and said, hey, I need a little more money in it, just in case. I think the minimum at one time was 2,500 you had to have in there, but I'm not sure how that works. But now, today, guess what? He'd have been putting more money in there. He'd have been pouring money in there, left and right, into my hedge fund. Now, if you want to do that, I suggest you strongly talk to a broker that, and I don't know many in the East. I know of some in the West, the Midwest. They're all over the place. You can find them, Google them. Find one you're comfortable with. Ask around, ask for references if you want to do that. There's also a thing called buying puts and calls. They are a little more complicated. But basically, when you sell an LRP, you're buying a put. A put, the only thing that the LRP does not allow you to be active in the marketplace. So the LRP, or the put establishes a floor. You also have to have that pot of money sitting there, that put value fluctuates, okay? So the put if you buy a put here, okay, and that put might only cost you, say, $7 a hundred. Seems like the puts and the LRPs run pretty similar for the most part. Up here, you could have got out of that put, sold a hedge, and made some money. Okay? That's just a very brief thing about you need to talk to a broker. I know enough to be dangerous. I'll just tell you that. I helped a lot. I used to help a couple of large hog producers. One would sell a tractor and trailer load of hogs a day. And that's where I'm telling you, you need to know your cost of production. This guy had it down to the pennies, what it cost him to produce a pig. So know your cost of production. If you don't know your cost of production, which you really should anyway, because this guy and this lady and that guy's gonna want to know it anyway, right? Your finance person's gonna want to know, what's it gonna cost you? What's your projected cost? Gain, cost of producing that calf as a cow-calf operation. Okay? A little bit, I just wanted to touch a little bit on a few things for the other people say. One thing was about clean water. And Dr. Francis Fluharty did a study. I heard him talk one time he was at Ohio State at the time. Where's he at now? Missouri? Georgia. He's a pretty sharp guy. If you ever get to hear him talk, he's very down to earth and understands general cattle production. But anyway, they did a study on how dirty water affected the rumen. And they basically forced some livestock to be in a muddy, dirty situation. And the amount of silt in those rumens, he said, he showed pictures, and it was unbelievable. That silt had settled down into the bottom of their rumens and was actually starting to shut the rumen down. So I do it. I have cattle in muddy places too. We're in a situation right now. We can't help it. We're trying to do the best we can. It happens. What I'm saying is this is an opportunity for another drought in the future for you to be able to take advantage of some of these programs and get some clean water established. Okay. If you guys have any questions about LRPs, risk management, I suggest you talk to the farm credit team. They have a lot of resources for that. We are Deputy Commissioner probably doesn't want me to, and I don't like to predict. But we're in a weird situation right now. Cash market is high on feeder cattle. And fat cattle, futures are lower. There's a big spread and difference between that. So everybody, all the times people ask me, well, what do you think the market's gonna do? If I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be staying here tonight. I'd be in Chicago in a top of a penthouse and be playing the market every day. Okay. And all indications are the cattle market's gonna stay strong, and possibly this is a blip. One of those black swans that people talk about. I hope and pray to God that it is. I hope it's not an indicator. The problem is, I think what we're seeing is they're the fund managers and the investors are getting scared. And they're finding other opportunities to invest in. So they're sucking their money out of the commodity. If that makes any sense at all. Okay, any questions? Yes, sir.
Like, one of the things that you said that I think is so right about LRTs, and I'm just gonna clarify this point, is that it is a known cost. We don't know how far down the market's gonna go or how high the market's gonna go, but we do know the cost of the LRT when we buy it.
That's 110% right. You know that you bought an insurance policy for roughly $3,000. If the market, say you bought it here and it went to $3, the only thing you're out is that $3,000 insurance policy. When we buy an LRP or we sell a hedge, we want the cattle market to go up. We don't want to have to use that insurance policy. You don't want your house to burn or your truck to wreck to use that insurance policy. Correct? I know I sure as hell don't. I pay enough insurance as it is. I just put my daughter on insurance. Woo! So it is, Isaiah is 110% right. It is part of your business plan. It is part of your expenses. It will be a part of the financial plan that you give to Trey or Greg, or I can't think of your name, just let my Ivy, I just left my brain. It will be part of that financial plan that you give them. It is an expense. And you will show them that you're planning ahead. You're planning for a worst case scenario. Just like I said, had those cattle hit $3 on the board, who cares? You protected yourself. However, they didn't. We all know that the cattle market's an up and down and it's a bell curve. We all know that. If we don't know that by now, we shouldn't be in the cattle business. So you would have netted that $12,000 we were talking about earlier and added that to your check. Any questions? Very good point.
All right. Do you have a second? Put you on the spot. Well, this gave me a good opening to invite Kelsey French from Cattlemen's Insurance Agency that's here to visit with us. Quick moment to give her spiel.
Yeah. Well, we do LRP too, but we do crop and livestock insurance. But what I really came today to make sure everybody knows about is PRF, so it's pasture, rangeland, forage. This is just a product that is going to help you when there's a decline in precipitation. So you can have hay or pasture ground that you're going to insure against that rainfall index. So your land's gonna fall into a grid, it's 12 mile by 12 mile grid, and there can be an expected rainfall amount for each interval that you choose. If you don't hit that, then you could receive an indemnity. So I've got some handouts and I'd like to chat with anybody afterwards, and if anyone has any questions, this is very informal of me, so I'm happy to take any questions about it.
Thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot. That was a good opportunity. Any questions? All right, so we'll wrap up the night. I'm not gonna talk long. I just want to go over a little bit of, I can't do two things at once, so bear with me. Just want to go over, I'm not even gonna pull the PowerPoint that I had. We've all been sitting on our butts for a long time, and I'm sure everybody's kind of getting anxious and ready to move. But I just want to stress the point that we need to take care of ourselves in this time. I know you guys want to listen to me sit up here and tell you to talk about your feelings, but we need to take care of ourselves and we need to take care of our neighbors. Sometimes that is as simple as checking on each other, going out for a cup of coffee, just having a conversation with somebody else. It gets lonely sometimes in times when you're through stress or having a disaster or crisis like this, and you can feel alone, but you're not. I mean, this is a perfect example of all the people in this room that we're all in the same boat and we're all struggling with it. So just take care of yourself, take care of others. I've been to many trainings for stress management. I have lots of stress, so I'm not always the best one to sit up here and talk about it, but a lot of them talk about getting a hobby that you enjoy that's not stressful. Unlike me, who has a hobby that is very stressful, which is goats. And you know, that's hard to say. We're farmers. Farmers don't have a lot of time for hobbies, but do try to find things that you enjoy. Maybe it's going on a Sunday drive. Maybe it's watching NCIS. I don't care. Whatever it is, just make a little bit of time for yourself. I know I hear every time I go to one of these meetings, I hear, oh, get away for the weekend. That's really hard for farmers because it's more stressful to get away than it is to be there. So, you know, maybe that's not maybe your best idea, but just maybe go out to dinner, go to a movie. Just do something with your family, with your friends. If you have a friend you see that's in crisis, you're noticing signs, you're noticing stress, you're noticing change in behavior, you're noticing the farm is looking, you know, maybe in less better shape than it, or in worse shape than it normally does. Check on them, take them for lunch. You don't have to talk about the hard stuff. Just go and talk. Just go and listen. Just be there. So I'm going to end with that. If anybody wants. Oh, yes. Is anybody from the agencies want to talk?
You guys wanna?
Just a quick FSA, NRCS, Conservation District.
Sure.
Or Robert. All right, Robert.
No, you gotta come up here so they can hear you on the Zoomy Zoom.
The owl needs you.
Alright. So, my name's Robert Reed, and I'm the County Executive Director for the FSA office in Grant County. We do have some programs available. They took place, opened up July 16th, the minute we went to D3. One of the main ones that we're focused in on is the livestock forage disaster program. So what we're going to need you to do is get a count of the cattle that you have, adult wise, and any weaned cattle that you have. And what you can take that into the office. And as long as you have a crop report done, then we're going to be able to, it goes into an equation, and there's two different equations to that. I don't fully know how to tell you how that's all computed, but the software does it for us, and we're going to pay a percentage of the lesser of the two. Now, if you don't have a crop report on file, don't freak out, don't be alarmed. You can still file one. It's going to be a $31 late file fee, but you're going to get that paid back. It's going to get paid for, you know, you're going to make that money back. It's what we, you know, and that's what we've got right now. Now, the minute we go to D4, if we go to D4, which I think we will, we haven't received enough rain to change that from happening, then that extends another round of payment coming from that program. We also have, I had information, but it's fastly dwindled. But if you go in your local office, so and all the Hardy County people go in and see Amy Kyle, Eric Custer, all the Pendleton County people that's in here, go see Andrea Landis and Pam Spawnall. Grant County, come see it. Myself and Charlotte, Hampshire and Mineral, go see Julie Halderman and Stacy Baker, and they're going to be able to help you. I do ask that you call ahead, make an appointment, and you know, so you can come in and see us. We're trying to, you know, so the offices don't get bombarded. You know, we talked about mental health and mental stress, and the majority of a lot of the people that are working in those offices are right there in the same boat as you. You know, I'm a farmer. I have land up, we're farming up in Mount Storm and we're feeding cattle right along too. So I ask you just to be patient. We're all still learning this program because this is the first time that the majority of the offices in the Eastern Panhandle have done this. We've got a lot of new employees, but we do have that program available. If you're feeding hay, if you're buying hay, if you're hauling water, if you're buying water, keep track of everything that you do. Keep those receipts. There's another program that's emergency livestock, whatever the acronym, but it's called ELAP. That's going to be another program that's available to us that we're going to be able to work for. We're also, each of the offices are going to be applying for some emergency conservation practices to go up through to help with water systems and anything along those lines. And that's a little bit of a lengthy situation. You know, the county committee has to send it up to the state committee and request it. State committee then sends to the national office and they get to make the decision whether it gets approved or not. So it's not a quick fix. It's not a quick turnaround. It's the federal government. We know that there's a bunch of paperwork involved. So I just come see us. You know, we do have some funding available and such. And just, you know, just be patient. Everything it'll work out.
Hey, Robert, you mentioned cows, but that also applies to other livestock that may be on the farm, sheep, goats, those
right.
kind of things that folks are feeding.
Yes, correct. Sheep, goats, anything that's considered livestock. You know, we have a bad habit of just mentioning cows because that's what the majority of us all do, but it works for everything else as well. And if you know, some people have already bought like calves. You've had to have owned them for 60 days by July 16th. So that's something to keep in consideration. You've had to have them ownership of those for at least 60 days. And if any leased ground, you've got running cattle on, it may turn into a pain, but you know, the program is requiring us to have a lease agreement. You know, we can help draw you up a little paper if you know, the landowner will work with you on that and such, but that's one of the other little stipulations that we've got to have. Any questions? Yes, Miss Amy. Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to grow crops.
Right.
Grass and your playground is very important to report.
Yeah.
To every year, July 15th.
Yeah, so. Yep, repeat that. Yeah.
That break down on your cattle, it's cows, their calves, something that they don't count. Bulls and the weaned calves, there's a breakdown in whether they're heavier than 500 pounds or less than 500.
Right.
And then as far as the lease agreement goes, we do have a very separate one that we can provide.
Yep. So, Ronnie, that was Amy in the background, and she's, you know, was going over how, even though important doing a crop report with us is, even though you're not growing a crop, you know, a lot of us are just hay and pasture guys and such, but it's still very important because you never know when we're going to get in a situation like we're in, and here we are, and you know, we try to grab as many people as we can to get this crop report done, but obviously there's still a lot of people that don't. So, and it's beneficial. I mean, you know, people think that when they come to our office that our records jive with the courthouse records, and that's just not the case. So it's important to come in the office, even if it's just for 5 minutes, saying, hey, you know, I've just started putting cattle on this farm, or hey, I just want to make sure that we're good and square away with you know, some eligibility forms that we have and everything along those lines. And there is a breakdown, like Amy said, we cannot count any nursing calves, but we can count bred heifers and bulls and such. And the calves have to be broken down that are weaned into 2 weight groups, 500 pound or less and over 500 pound. Any other questions? Yes.
I think it's in,
Talk about real
Go.
quick. One is that forage. How many people here, I know you love that. How many people here had a 35% off on their hay this year? You've been eligible for payment under that forage. Second thing you need to think about is FSA loans. We don't talk about those all the time when we think about maybe some of these, but if you're in a bind, there's potential for us to be able to refinance some of your debt operating primarily because we cannot do real estate. But if you have something with farm credit and you're not able to make that payment because of lack of livestock, come in and talk to your people in the FSA office and see if we can refinance you and help you out. Thanks much.
What was he gonna say, Ronnie?
I just think it's important as we make this recording, and there may be some folks that aren't in a D3 region, that some of the things you talked about are available because of that D3 declaration over in Eastern Panhandle, but it still encourage folks to go to your local office and visit with those folks and get everything in line so that if things continue to worsen, then you're prepared as that D3 may spread a little further to the west.
Yep, I agree. Any other questions?
I can, through NRCS, we're mostly gonna be technical assistance for the emergency programs that farm service agencies will be able to provide and with the water systems later. We're in a situation for 2024, NRCS has already allocated all of our funds. If you're someone who's been actively working with your local soil conservationist and you have a really good plan ready, and you feel like if you implemented that plan early, that would be the thing that would get you through this fall, you could come in the office and we can assist you. You have to request a waiver to do those practices early. Because our physical year doesn't start again until October 1. There will be no more funds within our CS until after that point. Right now, I'm attempting, and there is some potential, I'll hopefully know before we do the next webinar. We're the first one, right, Alex? I'm asking this, West Virginia State Office to consider, a separate fund pool for these drought D3 areas. So that, hopefully we can fund some of your grazing projects early with a separate pot of money, for financial year 2025, but hopefully I'll know a little bit more about that in the coming weeks, but mostly for us, we can help you with any technical assistance, but if you have any questions, I can take care of those.
Ben, Cindy, either one of you wanna, might have to come up here so you can.
You gotta come up and talk to the owl.
Talk to the owl.
I'm Ben Devner, I work for the conservation agency. We take care of cost share programs through your local district, Trinity Valley Conservation District. Currently, Conservation District's offering cost share on portable water troughs and water tanks and pumps and any associated fittings you need. There's also 50% cost share on tap for public water systems. You need a tap for public water, that's also available. District also offers cost share on forage sampling, and they've done that for many years now. If you ask me which lab, I'm not 100% sure, I can't remember, but they do offer that currently. That's about all that's going on right at the moment, but sign up, I got papers back there. If you want an application now, we get you signed up and taken care of. Probably in the near future, they're probably gonna offer some reseeding programs, cost share on reseeding some of these beat up areas that may not come back. So keep in touch with your local conservation district, see what's going on.
Thank you, Ben. Department, Dad? That's anything?
Oh. Yeah, I will pass up the opportunity to reiterate some of what Jerry and Brad said. Brad's points about confining animals, closing gates, you have got to do that. It's too late probably in most cases to do rotational grazing, but that's worth looking at for future drought mitigation. I think it was Jerry and Trying to think Darren may be talking about some opportunities. I've been through a few droughts, so I may not look that mature yet, but I've been through a few of them. And had some challenging experiences. I've hauled a lot of water in my life. I live south of Morgantown, north of Fairmont. And I live in a dry spot in that part of the state. I have a drought every year of about 6 weeks. It happens whenever it wants, usually in July and August. Sometimes it's Labor Day in October, but I always plan for that. Drought is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to feed on those areas that you normally can't get on intelligently in the wintertime, and abuse some of those now and try and build that land back up for future forage potential. So most of the ground that I have is on rented ground from various neighbors. It was abused ground. That was a political acronym that I would use, but I'm not going to use that tonight. But it was abused. Those folks took the soil off there over the years by livestock and hay, and it's now full of blackberries, autumn olive, tree of heaven, hawthorns, multiflora rose, any other undesirables that you can think of. And you can do a lot with a bale of hay and 20 cows, or a lot with a couple bales of hay and 40 cows. And you can go and plan for the next drought. You're already in it. You're not going to stop this one, but you can start thinking now about an opportunity for the future. So I would encourage you to be thinking about that, because again, if you concentrate, as Alex was saying, on the negativity now, you know, it's bad. Find something good to focus on. And that's one way to go and try and beat some of the blues that we might have related to the current drought. The Department of Agriculture, West Virginia agriculture.gov, I believe is a correct webpage. As soon as you hit our homepage, there is a drought resources page. There's links to FSA, Conservation District, wherever Ben went. There you are. Sorry, Ben, I lost you. There's links to them. There's links to extension articles and publications. And if we're going to put this stuff on the web, make sure I get a copy of that link to go and put that there. Ivy just shared the fact sheet that many of you had to put that there. Several of you folks are probably looking for hay. How many are looking for hay? Yeah, there's all sorts of hay. This thing is absolutely magical. I have discovered this thing called Facebook Marketplace. All right, seriously. Type in your nearest location. It'll pop up with city address recommendations for close proximity to you. Type in hay in the search bar. Type in the last 24 hours, and it'll populate you a list of hay that's available between probably Cumberland, Maryland, and Winchester, Virginia. And then it'll give you a bunch of odd ones from Nebraska or somewhere else. But the point is, if you type in to some of these web-based platforms, whether it's Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, there's several of the old paper bulletin boards and other folks that are out there. They all now have web-based systems. And then also the market bulletin that some of you get. There's all sorts of hay listed on those places that supposedly is for sale. All right. And as again, previous speakers have said, don't wait. Reduce that stress. Sell because prices are high, and hurry up and buy your hay now so you don't have to worry about it come January and February and try and beat that punch. The other thing I'll say about a drought is it will rain again. You might get some fall growth. Don't be in a hurry to get back out on that. Once you've got your abuse lot, maybe use it a little bit longer, or maybe find another field once it starts to grow. But let that grass recover. Let that grass recover. It's a whole lot more fun to graze cows in January than it is to go and slop around in the mud. I know people like diesel fuel. I heard John Deere mentioned earlier. I like John Deere and a few other different colored paints. I like that. I really don't like to burn diesel fuel. I really don't like to spend too much money. And if cows can go and graze in January when it's yucky out, and you don't have to do the tractor work, or maybe you're just going to provide some supplement, That's a whole lot better on the pocketbook. All right, so, West Virginia Agriculture, wvagriculture.gov is a drought resource page. There's all sorts of resources on there. The gals have put links to Facebook and links to Craigslist on there. There's a link to the latest market bulletin. Use those if you want to go and get into those web pages and find those resources. I do not have a Facebook page or whatever that is. Somebody sent me a hot link a few years ago for a vehicle, and I keep going back to that to figure out how to get to Marketplace. So you don't have to go and participate in Facebook to use it. That's my point.
Very good. All right, thank you. Any questions or comments?
But, is there any, programs out there for pond cleaning or pond?
The question is, what, is there any programs out there for pond cleaning or pond development or construction? Point that over to you guys.
So from what we can tell now, it seems like most of the drought stuff is more on the readily available water than, you know, to put a pond in, you're not gonna get it to fill up at this point. So most of the practices that we've seen that could be on the emergency list are, you know, more immediate fixes for water.
In my circumstance, I'm more ready to clean than build a new, I mean, I do need to build a new place, but I, you know, we all know that's the perfect time to clean a pond, so.
It is,
Didn't want to clean a pond and then here comes the money.
but I mean, hopefully we can get some more answers for you soon, but it looks like, no, I mean, the recommendation would be to do it when it's low, but I don't think there'll be any financial assistance to cover it.
Yes, sir.
Jerry talked a lot about calling cows, so we're selling cows, everything we're selling calves. And then we have a lot of income, at least on paper, for this year and get hammered with taxes. Is there any initiative to maybe pool some calves, get truckloads out and retain ownership? Is there anything going on so we can defer that income into next year?
It'd be an RH question.
Ronnie Ray?
In the past, we have in the past, we have had the feedlot test program, or not test, but the feedlot program. Right now, has to answer your question, Stefan, hadn't been any discussion about that, but certainly if there's some interest, we can pull some resources together and start looking at that. But as you plan through that, make sure you talk with your accountant on ways to also manage some of those extra dollars that may be coming in.
Other questions?
Matt, if you're still with us, do you have any comments you'd like to share?
Well, no, not really. I'm very interested though, and I'm glad y'all are having this this meeting to try to get with a lot of these things. The only thing I will say is that take a hard look at those FSA programs. You know, they haven't had much for livestock in the past, but this LFP has been around now for a few years, and the last drought we had where we were eligible for that, it helped a lot of people, and it's again, look into it because it is a very significant, you know, it will really help you, and all of us have had the help that comes, and it's a few $100s, and it doesn't really help that much, but this is more substantial. So look into LFP for sure, because I believe probably almost everybody with livestock in there is going to be eligible before the drought's over.
Just one more thing I want to make sure everybody realize. So, we worked at the governor's office there a week or so ago, and we got a drought declaration for the state. That helps. That's a start. So you should now have access to local impoundments or fire departments for some more water. All right. So if you're still struggling to find water to haul to your livestock, which I know is not fun, I've been there, done that. But if you're struggling to find that water source, that's something that we need to know. Your county emergency services folks, fire departments, those types of folks should be able to help identify those sources of water. Maybe your county agents are in that loop locally too. So that declaration helps. The next step for that will be to assess the need for supplemental assistance besides what the FSA folks can do. And we're still trying to understand those moving parts. And as those become clear, we will again work with your political leaders to try and identify additional assistance to make available. I did not say there was money available. I said we'll work to try and make some more available, and that'll come back to you folks as much as anything to go and talk with your legislators about what you need. Okay? So first step was to get the drought declaration. We're D3. Discussion now is how soon before we're D4, and that's extreme severity of a drought. And then what does that mean? There's local counties here I know that are talking about fire ban burns or fire bans, burning bans. Those are critical at this point with some of the grasses that we have here that are completely dehydrated and really vulnerable at the moment. But then the next step will be, what do we need on farms? I hear you about the ponds. Government, again, as Robert pointed out, is reactionary. It's not proactive, so it will take time. I lived and farmed in the 99 drought. I lived and farmed in the 88 drought on the other side of the mountain. And those droughts were pretty catastrophic on the western slopes. And government comes in at the back end and tries to help. So be patient, but it also isn't an easy time to be patient.
Any other questions or comments?
We want to thank Ronnie, go ahead.
Just going to say, as we get close to wrapping up, just remember that folks are here to help you, and don't be afraid to ask questions or make those phone calls, and don't forget to look out for your neighbor. We're all in this together.
Now, we're in a relationship-based business, and the relationships are really all we got at the end of the day. So you need help, reach out. You have something to offer, reach out. Take care of yourselves, take care of your neighbors, have a safe trip home, and look forward to this series of webinars where we'll take deeper dives into each one of these subjects or each group of these subjects, starting after State Fair. We got together what we could as quick as we could. More information is coming by the day. So stay tuned and stay in touch. Y'all have a safe trip home, and thanks everybody for being here.